Welcome to New Horizons in Chinese Philosophy. I am Yuncheng Zhou. I have been teaching Chinese philosophy at Tsinghua University since 2011. This course was initially designed for international students who come to Tsinghua for graduate study. I am now developing it into a MOOC course. This is the first lecture. In this lecture, I will give you an overview about this course. I will focus on 4 questions. Question number 1. What is this course about? The second question, for whom is this course designed? Question 3. What is to be learned from this course? The last question, what is required to do in this course? Let's begin with the first question. What is this course about? This is a philosophy course. What is philosophy? The word philosophy comes from the ancient Greek philosophia, which literally means love of wisdom. It is a study of the world in most general sense. It is concerned with nature of the world and knowledge of the world. Working philosophers use technical terms, ontology and epistemology, to label these 2 areas of philosophy. However, my favorite formulation of it is from W.V.O. Quine, a distinguished philosopher in the 20th century. He classified philosophical inquiry into 2 areas, ontological inquiry and predicate inquiry. Ontological inquiry is to explore what there is in the world. Predicate inquiry is to get clear what can be meaningfully asked about what there is in the world. For example, we are wondering if there is soul in the world. In order to prove there is soul in the world, we need to give an ontological account of a world that contains a soul in it. People who object to this position would advance an argument to show there is no soul in the world. This is also an ontological argument. Here we have a debate about existence of soul. If it is a philosophical debate, it has to satisfy some criteria. The criteria that both parties would agree on. For instance, what questions can be meaningfully asked about existence of soul or non-existence of soul? What counts as a legitimate response to the questions? These are predicate issues. The predicate inquiry will be strikingly important when it comes to Chinese philosophy. We will return to this later. The next thing is Chinese philosophy. This label is anachronism. the word philosophy was translated into Chinese by way of Japanese scholarship in the 19th century. Nishi Amini creatively coined a Chinese word 哲学 as equivalent to philosophy in English. However, Chinese philosophy as a field of study started 3,000 years ago. I think the core part of Chinese philosophy took shape before 221 BCE, before Common Era. This is the part covered in this course. Before we go into the content of the course, I would like to say something general about approaches to Chinese philosophy. Chinese philosophy can be understood as Chinese thoughts which have little to do with philosophy in the West. So, we see in U.S. universities, Chinese philosophy is not usually housed in a philosophy department. It is rather in a department of, say, East Asian studies. In China, scholars working on Chinese philosophy take it as a study of philology, a study of history, history of ideas, a study of political ideas, a study of moral ideas, and so on and so forth. Whatever field it is not philosophy in a strict sense. Chinese philosophy can also be approached with a comparative philosophy paradigm. Points of comparison are to be identified, and then the implications are to be explored. For example, compare Confucian ethics with virtue ethics. Develop a Kantian interpretation of Confucianism. Compare Confucianism with American pragmatism, and so on and so forth. What this line of research tells us is extension of philosophical thoughts rather than philosophy as such. It is a spatial picture of what is going on in philosophy, just like history of philosophy is a temporal picture of what is going on in philosophy. Neither is concerned with philosophy per se. The above two approaches to Chinese philosophy are not philosophical study in essence. They are outliers. No matter how productive they are, their contribution to philosophy is limited in terms of philosophical achievement. The philosophical approach I recommend in this course is this. Classical Chinese thoughts provide rich resources for academic study. They feed historical study, literary study, political study, sociological study, and of course, philosophical study. Thus, Chinese philosophy can be defined as a philosophical study of Chinese thoughts. This consists of two parts. One is to locate those aspects of Chinese thoughts that could be taken as subject matter of philosophical study. The other is to set up a framework of Chinese philosophizing to make clear, meaningful questions to ask in Chinese philosophy. If working philosophers contribute their efforts in these two parts, Chinese philosophy as an academic discipline would be established in a substantial sense. With that goal in mind, let us go into the details of Chinese philosophy. We will focus on philosophical study of classical Chinese thoughts. To be more specific, we will study Chinese thoughts advanced by Confucius, Mozi, Laozi, Zhuangzi, Mencius, Xunzi, and legalist thinkers. Confucius is the founding father of Confucianism. Mozi is the founding father of Moism. Laozi and Zhuangzi are founding fathers of Daoism. Mencius and Xunzi are system builders of Confucianism. Han Feizi is synthesizer of legalism. The reason why I choose classical period of Chinese thought will be given later. The last thing to say about this is new horizons. This is the distinguishing feature of this course. The idea derives from Quine's predicate inquiry of philosophy. Predicate inquiry is a semantic examination of philosophical discourse. It helps to diagnose what is wrong with a certain semantic formulation of philosophic thesis on the one hand, and set up a context in which a philosophical debate is to take place to a certain substantial extent on the other hand. As it goes, ontological questions would get resolved. Suppose we have a dialogue like this. Two persons. Person A, he says, Hamlet is a great prince in Denmark. Person B replies, what? Hamlet does not exist. A says again, when you said Hamlet does not exist, you presupposed existence of Hamlet and said of him that he does not exist. After all, the name Hamlet is used to pick out a person. It is no problem that the name Hamlet is used to pick out a person in existence. However, in the sentence, Hamlet does not exist, Hamlet is a seeming name. It is not a real name. It is to be paraphrased as an incomplete symbol in semantic analysis. The sentence can be paraphrased as, there is no one called Hamlet. Or, to be more explicit, it is not the case that there is someone such that he is called Hamlet, and he exists. In this case, no definite individual is talked about. Ontological reference is not to be fixed by use of the name Hamlet alone. It also requires the whole context to attain a full completion of reference. We see that ontological reference is semantically context-dependent. Ontology is arrived at through semantic calculation of linguistic context. This Quine called ontological commitment. It is a commitment that arises from a linguistic act in the context. Ontological commitment can be made clear through semantic examination of linguistic context in which a linguistic act takes place. Ontology cannot be scrutinized in the similar way. Quine told us that it is ontological commitment that counts in philosophy. When we do philosophy, what we try to work out is ontological commitment rather than ontology per se. In Analects, Confucius did not directly respond to his disciples' question, "What is 人?" Instead, he tried every means to figure out how to get his disciple committed to 人. Dao is impossible to talk about. Lao Tzu makes every effort to get us to be committed to Dao in his metaphorical description of what Dao does. How do we account for the debate on human nature between Mencius and Xunzi? This is not a question of what human nature is. Rather, it is a question what Mencius and Xunzi were committed to when they talked about human nature. Predicate inquiry like this can be applied throughout the study of classical Chinese thoughts. This will bring out lots of new horizons in Chinese philosophy. In this course, I invite you to join me working out ontological commitment of those classical Chinese thinkers. So far, I have briefly sketched what this course is about. This is a philosophy course. This is a Chinese philosophy course. This is a Chinese philosophy course with new horizons.